Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Coming to you again tonight. This is a Tuesday night, November 24th, 2020. Tonight we're doing an expose on an Ahmadi Maulvi named Rizwan Ahmad. I don't have anything personal against the guy. I wish him the best. I don't do the personal attacks on people. You know what I mean? He seems to be, he's doing his job. He works for the Mirza family. He can't question them or object to them. In fact, I saw him on a Zoom call with Mirza Maghfur Ahmad, not a Zoom call, but like a Zoom meeting that they had. And he was like the Murabbi that Mirza Maghfur Ahmad was referring to questions, ask the Murabbi. So he's like one of the top Murabbis in America. There aren't that many. There can't be more than either 10 to 20 of these guys, and they're all brainwashed, committed to the Mirza family. They're not willing to open any books and double check or triple check or et cetera, or have debates, official debates, and et cetera. They're not willing to do any of that. So anyhow, I go to this guy's Periscope. I've been going to his Periscope videos for a while. I don't remember how long, but it's been at least 6 months. And I'll ask him these questions, and he's rude and arrogant, and he doesn't know, he doesn't understand, and I've even mentioned him that he didn't graduate from college, and he took offense to it, right? I was just saying that it's true. Ahmadi mullahs aren't normally college graduates. That was what the second Khalifa invented. I think some of the first few had went to college. I think the one in London, Sayal, had actually went to college. They were going to the Aligarh college, and then they'd come back to Qadian, and the Khalifa would just approve them to be a Murabbi. There was no training back then. So anyways, this guy is just really mad, arrogant, rude, pretty normal for the Qadianis. So I asked him specifically, there is a hadith in Sahih Muslim and Ibn Majah where Isa al-Islam is supposed to be revealed from Allah, and this is still up for debate. It's still open for debate. It's still open. We don't know what this means yet. So I was just asking him, did Mirza Ghulam Ahmad ever comment on this specific part of this hadith? And what about this hadith in general? Where and when did Mirza Ghulam Ahmad comment on it? I just simply asked the guy this one question, and he just blew a gasket. He was like, I'm not going to answer anything you have to say. Oh, so he said, so there we had an email exchange a few weeks before that, and we were talking about the same hadith. And okay, you know what? On the Periscope, actually, now that I think about it, I was asking him a different question, and he refused to answer. I asked him about Ahmadiyya schools in Nigeria. Are they funded by the government? He was like, nope, you made a mistake. You emailed me and said in this one hadith, the word Nabi-ullah only occurs 3 times. You're wrong. And then he was rude. He was like, you don't even know Arabic and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, well, and I'm trying to figure out what this guy's talking about. So I go back and I double check all the work because I don't have everything memorized. I don't spend my time memorizing stuff, right? So I did tell him that in the Sahih Muslim hadith, the word Nabi-ullah for Isa al-Islam, I told him, hey, it only occurs 3 times. This isn't the famous one where it occurs 4 times. This is a different one. So he blew a gasket. He's like, oh, you need to admit. So on Periscope, as I'm talking to him, trying to ask him other questions, he's like, first you need to admit your error. The word Nabi-ullah does appear 4 times in Sahih Muslim in this specific hadith, and you need to admit that you didn't know or made a mistake. I don't know. So he's wrong. It only appears 3 times in Sahih Muslim. There is an almost identical hadith in Ibn Majah where it appears 4 times. So I emailed him again a few days ago, and I told him this. But remember, Ahmadis don't talk like regular humans. They're not here to have a proper discussion. They're not here to be nice. They're not here to do any of that. Ahmadis are competitive. And that's all they're doing is this competitive dribble. This competitive, hey, I got 10 talking points, and that's what I'm coming to say, and let's let the viewers decide. And that's wrong. I don't care what the viewers think. I'm not. I produce the data and the information, and I don't know what the heck they're gonna get from it. You know, my job is to just provide the content, and then whatever people think of it, I don't know. You know, but that shouldn't be the attitude. The attitude should be, let's find the facts in between us, right? So I was asking about this hadith, right? Did Mirza Ghulam Ahmad comment on this hadith, and specifically where it says that Allah will reveal to Isa alayhi salam, and I still haven't double checked and triple checked the Arabic. What's the Arabic word for reveal, right? So in the last few days, and I'm still, this is still a work in progress. I'm still checking. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad never commented on this specific revelation that Isa alayhi salam will receive upon his second coming. He never commented on it in his entire career. And maybe that's why this imam, this mullah, blew a gasket. Probably. I believe it. You know, they all get mad all the time. So this hadith is interesting because this hadith and the identical one from Ibn Majah completely knock Mirza Ghulam Ahmad out of the picture. He's finished. He's finished. So I went back and I checked. You know, I remember the Lahoris and the Qadianis after 1914 spoke about this hadith, but I couldn't find any of those references in the past 2 days. So, but I did find something else. So the Lahori Ahmadis posted a bunch of references wherein Mirza Ghulam Ahmad specifically spoke about Nabi-ullah 4 times in some hadith, right? I think Mirza Ghulam Ahmad erroneously said it happened in Sahih Muslim. He's wrong if he did. I haven't found that exact reference. But the Ahmadis on alislam.org have asserted that, and they're wrong. In Ibn Majah, it's 4 times, bruv, not Sahih Muslim. So y'all need to learn how to double check research work. And I believe it. You guys don't know how. You don't double check your mullahs because you trust them. Whereas in the Sunni world, we don't trust our mullahs. Not in America. Everyone's on the bubble. We don't follow any of them. We don't believe the thing. We double check. We triple check. You know, we're all human. So anyone can make a mistake. You see what I mean? So okay. Here's the guy. Oh, and let me show you his Twitter account. Here's his Twitter account, and that's me logged in, showing it. All right. So I want to do some screen share and put my glasses on and read to you guys. So let's do that next. How about that? Because I wrote an essay on this, and I just normally read off of my essays. Okay, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so I just explained all of this. The revelation that I was asking about is I have brought forth from amongst my servants such people against whom none would be able to fight. You take these people safely to Tur. So in this hadith, Allah is saying that Isa, alayhi salam, upon his second return, will have people with him that no one will be able to beat in a fight, in a battle. Okay? And in this hadith, it goes on to say that Isa alayhi salam will kill the Dajjal. The Dajjal, the main Dajjal, because there's 29 other ones, is a person. It's a human. Maybe it's a jinn. It's some type of human or some type of jinn. It's not the railway. It's not the Christian missionaries. It's none of that. Oh, and it's funny. So Rizwan Ahmad, he sends me an email and says, yeah, go to the, there's a chapter on Dajjal in Essence of Islam. Okay, so I go there, and I didn't find anything I'm looking for. This specific hadith is not found there anywhere. So, whatever. And here's just the, and then here's the reference to the Lahori Ahmadis. Here, let me show this. The Lahori Ahmadis covered this. Look at the reference. Look at the link. Okay, and I used all of this stuff here. All right, so I'm gonna cover it. Let's go back to my essay. Okay, so interestingly enough, here's now it gets funny. So in 1891 in Izala Aham, in that era, there was a letter between Nuruddin and Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. It might have even been earlier than that. I got to double check. But Nuruddin tells Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, go ahead and claim to be the like of the Messiah. It's okay. So this is back in 1884, right? He's saying, go ahead and claim it. Don't worry about the hadith of Damascus. Don't worry about that. Just go ahead and claim to be the like of the Messiah. And you're going to watch me move this up, because this is 1884. Sometimes, these Qadianis will change the dates on these letters, because this book with the letters wasn't published till after Mirza Ghulam Ahmad died. So in this letter, he says, yeah, don't. So they're already worried about this hadith, because in this famous hadith, and here, let me show it to you guys. I got it here at the bottom. Here's the reference, sunnat.com, right? And it talks about the east of Damascus. That's where Isa alayhi salam will descend. And it's a lengthy hadith. I'm not going to read it, even though it's in English. So anyhow. Back to the story. So in Izala Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, so 7 years later, he's claimed to be the Masih. Now he's claiming to be the actual Messiah, which is a huge problem. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad says, well, how do I get out of it? So he says, oh, Qadian resembles Damascus. So he says, this is how this hadith. So he's trying to interpret this hadith, not interpreting the whole thing, just little bits and pieces of it. He's not trying. He never even tried to interpret this revelation that Isa is supposed to get. All right. So he's trying. He says they're bad people in Qadian. It resembles Damascus and Yazid and etc. etc. Then he says, oh, this hadith, it wasn't recorded in Bukhari, and thus it's weak. It's a weak hadith. Bruv, what are you talking about? Let me show you where it's graded, because he doesn't know. Maybe the hadith book that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad had didn't have the grades. Who knows? He probably didn't care. But normally there's like a grading, and I can't find it right now. But no worries. This is a Sahih hadith. It's an authentic one, no doubt about it. Okay, so back to the story. All right, so he says, oh, it was a weak hadith. Then he says, the conclusion of the discussion is that it was unreliable. The narrator, Nawas, is unreliable. And I looked him up. He hasn't related that many hadith. Then Mirza Ghulam Ahmad says, oh, he made a mistake. Then he says, well, how is Isa alayhi salam going to come if he's a Rasul? This breaks the seal of prophethood. Right? And then why is he being called a Nabi? And then he says, oh, the reason he's being called Nabi-ullah is because he will be a muhaddis. And he's actually not going to be a prophet. So remember, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad argued for 10 years that the return of the Messiah will return as a non-prophet. And these Qadianis will avoid even speaking about that whole thing. Okay, and then in elucidation of object, this is the Urdu word. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it. Tozi Maram, I think. But anyways, then he says, oh, well, Rasulullah didn't make prophethood a necessary condition. And then he's arguing he won't be a prophet. So then in Hamamat al-Bushra, 1893, he says, now he starts talking about the minaret, right? The minaret is interesting, right? So he said, it's been conveyed to me that the minaret of Damascus, it's the value of the letters. So then he does this weird thing where he puts the value of a word, and then he says, here's the number. I think he even said the Messiah, the promised Messiah equals 1400, and that means, so he's got these weird, almost everything he says is weird. Okay, so no surprises there. Okay, so then in Siraj Munir, he says the same. He's making these same little arguments. So as you can see, he's not properly explaining this hadith. He's not going through it line for line. He's picking little pieces of it and trying to explain it, which is wrong. Why not just write about it? He wrote all these, him and his team wrote all these other books. Why are they avoiding this hadith? Which is, it should be the core of your arguments. It should be at the core of your claims, right? And then he never mentions Ibn Majah. Look, he keeps mentioning Sahih Muslim. He says the epithet Nabi-ullah. It's in metaphorical sense, like the Sufis. Then he says it again. It's a metaphor. Then in Arba'in, he says, no, it means he will be disclosed of news of the unseen. So now, in 1900, he's starting to say, okay, maybe it's true. Why? Because he's claiming prophethood. In these two books, in 1900, he was claiming prophethood. 16 years later, 15 years later, his son called the year 1900 a transitionary phase of his prophethood. He technically didn't claim prophethood until 1901, but he already became it, etc. Okay, 1900, the fake Eid sermon, Khutbah Ilhamiyah, happens, and it's published in book form about a year later, about 2 years later. Now he's begging for money for a minaret. So now he said, maybe this hadith is true. Let's build a minaret. So he goes about building the minaret. Is that hilarious? And then he gets over 100 people donated. He got all this money, and then the money's gone. They barely built it 6 feet or whatever. Okay, then he dies, and they ran out of money. The project wasn't even completed, right? So then he dies. Nuruddin is the next Khalifa. He doesn't complete it. It was in the Masjid Aqsa. People were probably looking, what is this? It's 6 feet. It had to be about 20 feet wide. So whatever. So it wasn't even published. It wasn't even finished until 1916. It's about 100 feet tall, 92 steps. They put a clock on it in 1933. Whatever. Okay. So then there's another part of this hadith that talks about the angels that will come down with Isa alayhi salam. Mirza Ghulam said Nuruddin and Abdul Karim are his angels. And then in a sick and twisted way, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad tries to create a parallel because it says that Isa will be wrapped in 2 yellow garments, one over the top of his body and the other over the bottom of his body. So it's in Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's style, which is weird. He says, well, because he urinates 100 times a day, that proves that his bottom garment is yellow. And this is about his diseases, right? And then he says the upper garment is all of my mental disabilities. Okay, so the guy is sick and twisted. Every argument that he makes and his team is writing down is sick and twisted. Anyhow, then in Jihad in the British government, he talks about the minaret again, right? And then I found another reference, Majmu'a Ishti'arat, where he talks about the hadith of Damascus. That's what he's calling this, right? And he says, well, his house is on the eastern edge of Qadian, and he's making some. Okay, so then in Tofa Gularvia, 1903, now he's claimed prophethood, and then he says, no, it's full of metaphors. So he still doesn't thoroughly go over this hadith. And then I found another reference in Jesus in India, Masih Hindustan mein, where he talks about the same thing, and he explains it the same way. And then here's an interesting one. After Mirza Ghulam Ahmad died, Nuruddin called Mirza Ghulam Ahmad the Nabi-ullah, and as he was referring to his daughter marrying Nawab Muhammad Ali Khan. And I have to add to this. No worries, there's going to be a part 2. And then in Nuzul al-Masih, which was published after he died, 1909, they called him a Nabiullah. In 1916, the minaret is built. Here is the hadith itself from Sahih Muslim and Ibn Majah. And then here's the funny thing. In 2018, not in 2018, Jalaluddin Shams says in Tazkirah that because this hadith talks about the gate of Lud, and he says that Isa will be there. Well, they say since Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's son visited Israel in 1924, this part of it was also fulfilled. But again, they didn't talk about the revelation that Isa is supposed to get. That's my question. Why didn't Mirza Ghulam Ahmad tell us what this meant? Why would he have left it out? It makes no sense, bruv. Oh, and I have a comment. Okay, so let's see what this comment is. Oh yeah. Ahmad Ali, I see him all the time on Facebook. Assalamu alaikum, brother. I'm not sure how long his comment's been there. But he says another important point in this hadith is the mention of Dajjal. Yes, the Qadianis claim that Dajjal is a system and not an individual, whereas we Muslims believe the Dajjal to be an individual. This hadith mentions that when the companions, may Allah be pleased with them all, heard about the fitna of Dajjal from Rasulullah, they were afraid to the extent that they began to think that the Dajjal was present in some near cluster or date palm. Yes, brother. All that's true, brother. So, okay. Now I wanted to show about the urination, because that's sick. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, and you know what's funny? Kiki, he tried to say Mirza Ghulam Ahmad didn't disrespect the God of Christians, whatever. He didn't disrespect Isa alayhis salam of the Quran. Well, he didn't cover all the references. In Nasimi Dawat, I think is the book, 1903, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad says he won't take opium, even though it's halal, since he's a diabetic. He says, because then people will joke. The first Messiah was an alcoholic, and the second one was a druggie. These are the arguments this guy makes. These are the things he says, which are just ridiculous altogether, right? So, and in that reference, he also says that he urinates 100 times a day. So that's how the two saffron is fulfilled. That's just sick. That's just sick. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show here is a video by a Punjabi guy where he talks about Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's urination problem. So without further ado, I'm going to share the screen and take you guys out with this. So, here we go.
एक आंखें नहीं, बांह तो टुंडा है, मुंह तो थत्था है, हकलाता था ये। लगा हुआ था कि चोरी चोरी कभी की थी। कहने लगे ये वैसे शरीफ आदमी है, मैं पैसे लेके करो क्यों रचना। मिर्ज़ा कादियानी के बेटे ने लिखा है।
Oh, okay. I can't exactly find it. I seem to have messed this up. Hold on. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh yeah, here it is.
और अक्सर उसका पेशाब जो होता था वो उसकी शलवार में निकल जाता था। मैं बेहवाला बात नहीं कर रहा। बेटे ने लिखा खुद बाप की सीरत में कि अक्सर ये होता, आप पहले सूती हजारबंद शलवार के अंदर इस्तेमाल करते थे, अक्सर ये होता कि रख खुलने से पहले पेशाब खोल जाता। वो जगह पे खोलता हूं तो मूत्र खोल जाता।
मूत्र।
अम्मा जान ने उसमें तब्दीली क्या थी। अम्मा जान ने क्या, ओए कंजरा बंदर दिया पुत्रा, खो तेरी शक्ल आ रहा बगैरता, किथों मेरे पल्ले पै गया हराम दिया। रेशमी उजार बंद पाया कर, वो रेशमी उजार बंद डाला गया, वो भी खुलने तो पहले पेशाब खुल जाता। और मैं वसूख से का हवाला गुफ्तगू कर रहा हूं कि मिर्जे को उसके घर वालों ने करारा पहनाया, इसलिए इस वास्ते जो तो मूत्र आवे जरा चुक्या मूत्र ले, मूत्र खत्म कराना थले, अप एंड डाउन। उन्हें खोते दे बच्चे में तेरी इन्नी शलवारा नहीं धो सकती। बांदर दी औलाद तेरी शक्ल देखी, मूत्र ते लगा, फिर तो लेकर शाम तक काम और कोई नहीं। शलवारा भरी जाना कानिया, ये काना भी था, ये टुंडा भी था, ये हकला भी था, खुद बेटे ने लिखा कि हजरत मसीह बहुत दानतुल्लाह है, पर नाला को पनाला कहते थे, पनाला.
All right, and here's the other one, which should be ready to go.
मैं क्या मिर्जे ने लिखा अपनी किताब ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਹਾੜੀ 'ਚ 100 ਦਫਾ ਪਿਸ਼ਾਬ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਕੋਰ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ 100 ਵਾਰੀ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਮਤ ਨੂੰ ਨਬੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਸਕੋਰ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਸੋਫਾ ਚੈੱਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਸੋਫਾ ਚੈੱਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਤੂੰ ਮੇਰੇ ਸੋਫੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਮੂਤਰ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਤਾ मिर्जे ने लिखा है कि मुझे दिन में 100 दफा पेशाब आता है मैं एक मरदई ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਉਹਨੇ ਮਸਾਨੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿਸ਼ਾਬ ਵਾਲੀ ਮੋਟਰ ਲਵਾਈ ਸੀ ਦਿਹਾੜੀ 'ਚ 100 ਵਾਰੀ ਪਿਸ਼ਾਬ ਕੋਈ ਛੋਟੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਸੈਂਚਰੀ ਰੋਜ਼ ਦੀ ਪਿਸ਼ਾਬ ਦੀ ਮਾਰਦਾ ਸੀ हम इसलिए ये कहते हैं कि उस बेईमान को तुम नबी और रसूल कहते हो तुम उसको सही उलक्कल और शरीफ इंसान साबित करके दिखाओ हमारा चैलेंज है कि तुम उसे एक सही उलक्कल और शरीफ इंसान साबित करके दिखाओ
Okay, so there's going to be a part 2. There's another part to this. Damon Stengel and these other Qadianis have been saying, how could Isa convert all Christians to Islam on his second return, where other verses of the Quran say people will be left. Well, in this same hadith from Muslim and Ibn Majah, it clearly says only the most wickedest of people will remain. And it has a description that says they will be committing adultery with each other and etc. etc. So that solves that also. This hadith solves so many problems. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you his picture one more time. And with that, assalamu alaikum and peace out. Enjoy the rest of your